Hello and welcome to the Sketchcast, the show that teaches you how to use sketching and visuals to be amazing in your job, at school and at home. We chat to interesting people to learn how they're using sketching to change the world. In this episode, I talk to designer, strategist, facilitator, author and all-round great guy Ben Crothers on the topic of online facilitation. This is someone who has been using digital tools for years to sketch and facilitate groups. The man is an absolute wealth of knowledge. I've also created visual notes for this chat, which I've included throughout the interview. So hopefully that should make it a bit more interesting to watch. And there's a bonus if you watch all the way to the end, as I've included some blooper clips. So if you want to see how a couple of IT nerds react when they finally get the audio working on their video conferencing call, be sure to stick around. Today's episode is brought to you by Graphic Gear. Graphic Gear is the official reseller of Neuland markers for Australia and New Zealand. Neuland markers are the marker of choice for illustrators and facilitators for good reason. They're non-toxic, they don't bleed through the paper, and best of all, they're refillable. Get your stationery geek on at graphicgear.com.au. And don't forget to use the code Sketchcast to get 10% off your order. Alright, so let's get into it. Welcome, Ben Crothers.
G'day, Matt. How are you?
I'm great. So it is May 2020.
It is.
We are currently in stage 3 restrictions lockdown, as is much of the world, which means we can't go to the pub, we can't eat out at restaurants, our kids are working from home instead of school, and lots of people have been impacted in a massive way. How are you faring and what are you doing to stay sane in these crazy times?
In these crazy times. Look, in some ways, I feel like I'm cheating a bit. Look, this is an introvert's paradise, right? Like, I just get to sit at home, I get to draw, I get to write. This is fantastic, and I'm saving an absolute mozza in public transport. And I'm also very fortunate to have like a really nice house and a lovely backyard. I've got local shops. I've got a fantastic park nearby to go and kick the footy. So in a lot of ways, it's really, really nice. But you're right. That said, like they are crazy times, and I have been getting cabin fever a bit. And I guess, I've got 2 kids, and they've certainly been doing school at home. Thankfully, they're both in high school, and they just stick to the regular timetable. So it's nice that they've got that structure. That's nice for all of us and all of our sanities. Yeah, but honestly, I've just got to make sure that I make time to get out of the house and go and kick a footy around, go for a run, have a stretch, because otherwise hours can go past and I'm stuck at the same desk in yet another Zoom meeting. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I'm realising that I'm much more of an introvert than I thought I was. I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear that, because I'm known amongst friends as being quite outgoing and talkative and gregarious. And I'm a bit like you. I'm happily playing a lot of guitar and doing a bit of drawing and reading and meditation and exercise in the gym, in the shed. And I'm quite happy, but I'm conscious that not everyone can spend that time on their own, and they need the social interactions and they're missing it. So anyway, I'm glad that you're coping as well as can be expected. So there's a ton of stuff that I want to ask you, but for our listeners, can you tell us your story about how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, sure. Well, my name is Ben Crothers, and I'm primarily a designer, a strategist and a facilitator, and I do like drawing a lot. I probably bleed dry erase marker ink. I love being at the whiteboard. And I guess I've been in the digital game since probably the mid-90s. So this is back when, putting under construction animated GIFs on websites was that was the sensible thing to do. Can you believe it? That's what we all thought. This is back in the days of Netscape Navigator and GeoCities, if you remember GeoCities. And I know they were crazy days, and that's how I first really got into digital. I had done some design prior to that in print design, but it was actually years that would go by before I would actually call myself a designer for some strange reason. I think I had a big inferiority complex about design. And funnily enough, at the time, I was also doing a lot of in-house training, like in different computer software applications and proprietary software. And so it was through classroom training that I think I actually started cutting my teeth as a facilitator, just developing those skills as far as reading the room, setting up a scaffold so people could interact with each other and learn and really get something out of that session together. And through the years, I've just done a mix of working at different agencies and startups and governments and consultancies and all sorts of clients and projects that have always involved facilitation in some way, and definitely a lot of design. And these days, I like to say I definitely design more with people rather than pixels. I'm often designing how people work, how teams are brought together, what are the work patterns that they use. And so designing that experience, meeting by meeting, workshop by workshop, that's a lot of what I'm into now.
I think a lot of people might be surprised to hear you describe that background. You're the author of a handful of books that are largely about sketching, and I think a lot of people assume that you're an artist who has found their way to make your art a part of work, but it sounds like it's been a bit more the other way around. Is that fair?
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess drawing in general has always been there. It's always been there. Even back when I was at high school, I had a bunch of mates. Actually, I don't think anyone knows this. I had a bunch of nerdy mates, and of course we'd deface every single textbook by drawing those little pictures in the corners of textbooks, and then you'd thumb the corner to make like animated pictures.
Mm-hmm.
We used to love that. We did that a lot. And I used to draw a lot of comics. I was moonlighting as a comic strip artist for a while as well. And when I got into design proper, because comic strips came so easily to me, I found myself storyboarding a lot. And whenever I wanted to explain a new idea, whenever I wanted to sort of show like a new product or a new service in use, I would do a storyboard. And people would say, hey, wow, that's fantastic. I can now really see how this is coming to life. And I thought, oh, I'm onto something here. And then I was regularly storyboarding. And then I remember being at a conference, I think it was in 2009, and there was a bloke next to me who was sketchnoting, because back then we didn't call it sketchnoting. I don't think we called it anything, but I looked at that and then a massive light went on in my head, and I was talking to him. And from that point on, from 2009 onwards, I thought, oh, this is a thing that I can do more regularly. It has more form, it has more structure. And from that point, I started doing these sort of quick, economical, explanatory kind of drawings in all of the workshops that I was running, as well as in my own notebook. And so, that's a long way of saying drawing has always been there in some form or another.
Yeah, great. So I want to talk to you today about online facilitation primarily, largely because I know a lot of facilitators who have been thrown a curveball because they don't feel like they're digital natives, or that they can take the leap to the online world, and they don't know how to take their activities and the things that they're used to doing in the room into an online environment. So can you share with me your experiences and the tools that you use and how you manage that space?
Yeah. And you're right. Look, it is a really interesting space, and it's something that we've been thrust into, which I think is an ultimately positive thing. And for me, it's a bit like design. I always think of facilitation the same as design in terms of mindset skill set and tool set. And no matter what tool set you're using, there's always a mindset that has to come first. And as a facilitator, it's always this art and science of trying to make sure everyone is really clear on the outcome of the meeting. Like, what are we all there to do? And your job as a facilitator then is to shepherd that along and to make sure that everyone kind of realizes move by move how to kind of go from step one all the way around up to the very end, like whether it's a big decision to be made or a final idea to land on, or a unique value proposition, or a bunch of goals that then have to go into a project plan. Whatever it is, there's a structure that you have to realize you need in place for people to understand this kind of progression, move by move. Mm-hmm. And the way you do that, that's where the skill set and tool set comes in. And yeah, you're right. As we've seen, since we're all online now, the tool set is definitely much different. And for me, there's it breaks down into two big camps. There's the digital tools that mimic the real world. And I'm sure we'll get into talking more about tools, but there's those tools that act like a digital canvas with digital sticky notes. So they're kind of aping the real world. That's great. But there's also the other side, which is really trying to make use of the advantages that the digital gives us. And by that, I mean, we can actually have more people in the room, not just what can physically be accommodated in a physical room and things like that.
Okay, so let's talk about some specifics. What are your favourite tools for each of those camps? What are you using at the moment?
Yeah, definitely Mural and Miro. I tend to use Mural the most. Mural is, I think it's been around for years and years now. It's a digital canvas. It's got loads and loads of different templates in it. It's great because you can certainly use a lot of digital stickies and have many, many people all logged in, moving stuff around together. But it also has some simple drawing tools that for me, I find really practical to be able to draw up different patterns and canvases and those sort of basic visual patterns to help structure a conversation. So it's really good at that kind of thing. Miro is great. I think it used to be called Real-Time Board. I've got a bit of a thing because I'm a bit of an artist and I've done art education and I always have a soft spot for a lot of artists. And I happen to really like the artist Miro. And to me, it's kind of makes me cringe when there's, like this software that's called after an artist. But anyway, like that's a petty little thing. And that's probably why I use Mural more than Miro. And so that's great for, I guess, having a canvas to visually generate stuff and move stuff around. There's certainly group chat like Slack and Microsoft Teams, so everyone can be in on the conversation at the same time. I'm also a big fan lately of software that lets you do polls and quizzes, stuff where you can check for understanding. Things like Slido.com. Have you heard of Slido?
Yes.
Slido is great. Mentimeter, it's just mentimeter.com. That's great. And because I've been getting more into energizers and icebreakers lately, just to try to make meetings more entertaining, more engaging, I've been getting into more online trivia applications and websites. Like there's a website called triviamaker.com. It's got loads and loads of trivia games on tap and it's totally free, which is awesome. But you can also put in your own trivia games as well. That's Trivia Maker. Those are the few that come to mind.
Right. And so is that what you're referring to when you say that these tools are not trying to replicate what you would normally do in the room, but they're trying to take it beyond what's possible?
For me, all of those, or apart from the quiz one, probably, they're all really replicating what we would normally do in the room.
Right. And so what else is there that's out there that can expand that?
Good question. I think it really becomes how you combine them. I think that's where the digital experience starts to really be enhanced. And by that I mean you can start a raw plan, if you like, with a group of people. You can have a structured conversation in something like Mural, where you can say, okay, where are we now? And you look at your strengths and opportunities and weaknesses, and then you have a discussion about where you want to be. And you may want to kind of draw a metaphor of a mountain or a bridge or something like that. And then when it's ready to go into the detail of how to get there, you can actually flip over to something like Trello, and everyone can jump in and make a whole bunch of cards in the lists that Trello gives you. And that way they can even start assigning stuff to each other or to people who aren't even in the room. And the whole time they can also be interacting through group chat. They can be uploading and downloading files in group chat as well. So I think the real magic comes in combining different tools together.
Gotcha. And this is all in parallel with video conferencing software like Zoom or Teams or whatever, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Actually, it's funny. I've noticed recently in Zoom, they now have little reactions. There's a new reactions button that's popped up in Zoom. And I don't know about yours, but at the moment, mine just has a thumbs up and an applause emoji. And for a while now, I've been using like a deck of little cards, and I've had a lot of success with those. And the cards themselves have things like emoji on them, and definitely things like, yes, I agree. And you know those times when you're in a meeting and there's like this heated agreement going on, people saying, yes, preach, that's fantastic. And there's also the Elmo card, you know that one, ELMO, enough, let's move on. That's a great card to wave. And of course, all of these things you start to set up a bit of a social contract with. And I think it's something that it's good to have an agreement at the beginning to say, look, when we meet online, there's a whole lot of non-verbal communication that we miss out on because we're not physically in the room. It's harder to pick up on all those non-verbal cues. And so having a cute little set of cards that you can flash up with different messages helps that. And it helps.
Are you saying that having applause and thumbs up is limiting our ability to express ourselves?
Well, I guess it's a start. Yeah. And I dare say the hit prediction is that there's going to be more reactions that come up in that little menu in Zoom, and probably other software as well. But those are obviously two common ones that Zoom have put in. But I reckon there's going to be more to come.
It begs the question that adding more to tools can make them harder to use, and there's already a barrier to entry for people that aren't as comfortable operating online. How do you go about getting people up to speed with tools like Mural if they've never used it before, getting their head around the different options for, like we had some technical difficulties getting our audio working before we started chatting today.
We did.
And both you and I have an IT background, right? So how do we get people without that background up to speed? How do you tackle that?
That's a really important question, actually. A couple of ways spring to mind. One, I suppose, is trying to help people prepare beforehand. By that, I mean, I might send a link out to a Mural canvas with an email or something in a group chat that says, hey, please get acquainted with Mural or whatever it is before the actual meeting, before the workshop. Because you'll probably need to create a user account first. You'll want to move a few things around, play with panning around the canvas, zooming in and out. I think panning and zooming are two things that people get stuck on. So there's that. But people being people, we're all busy. Often we get to a session and we haven't done any of the preparation. And as a facilitator, then you have to make sure that everyone has time to get acquainted. And one way I've found to be able to do that, and it kind of kills several birds with the one stone here. The very first activity I do is just ask a simple question like, what's one main thing you want to get out of this session? Or what's one skill that you have that you really want to bring to bear today? Or some kind of question that helps to oil up people's brains. And then I'll say, right, pick a spot on the canvas, and here's where I've prefabricated some text boxes and some stickies, and I'll say pick a spot and double click on a text box and write in there the answer to that question. Or you may want to create a new sticky note, use the menu on the side, things like that, and then put your answer onto the canvas. And so it's just a way for them to ease into using the canvas.
It's like the tutorial at the start of a video game.
Yes, I've never thought about it that way. Yeah, that's right. It's like that level 1. It's super easy, and you get that bling, ta-da! Here's your first badge. You unlock your first thing. Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Yeah, nice. So, how do you think that the availability of these online tools has shaped your style of facilitation?
Oh, gosh, that's a good one. The availability. Well, I think in some ways I might have been a bit spoiled, because for a lot of years I was working at an Australian software company called Atlassian, and like a lot of software companies, like a lot of companies maybe, we were very used to remote meetings, online meetings. We're very used to at least one person or a couple of people having to video conference in while the rest of us were in the room. It was always a bit of a hybrid, and because of that, we always had to compensate. And I use that word with meaning. We had to compensate for having some people online and some people offline, like some people IRL, in real life. And what that meant was we had a mix of stuff on a whiteboard and stuff in Mural or Miro or stuff in Trello. And we were doing awkward things like having to take photos of what was on a whiteboard, and someone would take that from their phone and post it into the Slack channel. And it was all very cumbersome. And then there was this massive watershed moment. There was this collective aha that went throughout Atlassian. This is a while ago now, to say, look, it's really a substandard experience for someone who's video conferencing in, trying to be 100% involved with a bunch of people who are physically in a room. And then it was quite interesting. It all happened at once, very quickly, where everyone said, okay, if one person is video conferencing in, we all video conference in. And suddenly it wasn't about compensating anymore. We had to make it work online. And once we had that force constraint, that made us embrace the tools that were around at the time. Like I remember years ago, because I think like you as well, maybe I've been a coder from way back. Like when you've been in the digital game for as long as us, you have to do everything. You had to design it all, code it all, front end, back end, you name it. And I remember years ago, I actually coded up my own application to do digital sticky notes. And I thought it was great. I thought this thing was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I thought I was really onto something, and moving like real digital sticky notes around, and you could type in them, and then you had to sort of click a button and it would commit it to the database, and you could drag it around. And back then I thought that was fantastic. But looking back, I can see it was just so cumbersome. It didn't have that really light, fluid touch that you need for something like that to actually be practical. So that's why I didn't end up using it for very long. But it's really shown me how the digital tools have really had to accelerate how well they have to be used, like how practical they have to be, how fast they have to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. As a former programmer who has worked with JavaScript, I can't imagine the kinds of performance and interaction design challenges that the Mural team have had to solve to get that thing working like it does in the browser. I'd take my hat off. It's massively impressive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, so on this podcast, we like to talk about visuals. And so how does, as a fellow visual thinker and someone who loves to express himself visually and teach others how to do the same, how do you bring visuals into your online facilitation moments?
Great question. One really easy way, I guess, is drawing on my iPad and using Zoom at the same time. So rather than just sharing what's on my laptop screen, through the magic of Zoom and that lovely green share screen button, you can actually choose to share an iPad screen via AirPlay, I think it is. And so that way, while I'm having a conversation, I can be drawing and everyone can see what I'm drawing. So that's as close as I can get to that fluid whiteboarding experience. Now, the downside of that is it's just me with the pen. There's no one else with the pen. So certainly for smaller meetings where it's really about briefing and information gathering and kicking around a problem, things like that, that works really nicely. I'm a big fan of that. Otherwise, I guess I'm really reaching for things like Mural, where everyone has the pen in a way. Everyone can be contributing into that same canvas space. So that's been a huge win for me. Actually, just a quick little story. I remember running a brand exploration workshop for a startup recently, and I had my lovely kind of structured set of templates, and we moved through those, and they had a wonderful time. It was really good. It was really productive. But the real magic came afterwards. They ended up inviting a couple more people into that canvas. And because they'd already filled it all out, it had organised all the right information that up until then had been just scattered in different places in the organisation and just hidden in different people's brains. And there it all was, all lovely and laid out in a really visual map in this canvas in Mural. And then we had a designer and a content writer just come in of their own volition and add their own stuff and sort out some photos and a mood board. And it just took on a life of its own. And then they told me this, like the guy rang me and he said, look, you're not going to believe this. I thought that canvas was great before. You should see it now. And they've really made it into something else. Something far more creative and practical for them. So I thought that was cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit off air earlier about how people can use visuals to express themselves. Do you want to talk a little bit about the role of visuals in online meetings and how it can help kind of address some of those non-verbal cues?
Yeah, good one. Definitely get used to using some kind of icebreaker or energizer, something that's visual. It can be as quick as if you're using Zoom, when you share screen, there's an option there to choose whiteboard, and everyone can draw at the same time. And a lovely little creative starter to a meeting is developing a random visual story. And the way it goes is the first person, it can be you, a facilitator, you make one small part of a drawing, doesn't even have to be much. And then you throw to someone else and then they add to that drawing. And then you go around the whole group. And before you know it, you've got this bizarre drawing and everyone has a laugh. And as a facilitator, then you can sort of call out, hey, look at how creative we were. Look how we built on each other's ideas. And that's a lovely way to kind of ease people into a creative mindset. That's a nice one. And also anything that gets them using colour, I find is really good. Sometimes, I don't know about you, Matt, but sometimes as a facilitator, I have to kind of help people navigate difficult discussions. There's elephants in the room that have to come out. There's difficult topics that need to be talked about, or maybe like really tough decisions where maybe not everyone agrees. And it's good to look for opportunities where people can speak in colour. By that I mean, are you green? Are you amber? Are you red? Pick a colour. Go. And it's just a very easy way for people to start expressing themselves where maybe they were struggling with words. And of course, it's a great democratizer as well. It doesn't matter whether you're the highest paid voice in the room or someone from the mailroom. It doesn't matter. You get your say the same way as everyone else. So when
you orchestrate that, are you asking people to draw a colour, or are you asking them to just say the name of the colour?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, good point. It can be with digital stickies if you're using any kind of digital canvas, where you might say, hey, let's rate the health of our team when it comes to, I don't know, decision making or shipping on time or whatever it is. What do you think? Are we green? Are we amber? Are we red? And then very quickly you get a bit of a heat map of how people think the team is.
Nice.
But hey, you don't even need digital stickies. Nonverbal communication is also using your hands and thumbs. Like thumb up can be yes, +1. Thumb on the side can be 0, I'm not sure. Thumb down, no, and so on. Even things like that as a quick check-in can be really powerful.
I love it. Ben, you're a superstar. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you sharing everything that you've learned about this new way of working that lots of people are really taking, kind of coming to grips with. Now's your chance to give a plug for whatever it is that you would like to plug. And you mentioned something about icebreakers earlier. It sounds like you've got quite a collection of icebreakers that you've used.
Oh, I certainly have. I certainly have, Matt. Yes, I've just dropped my latest ebook. It's called 50 Remote-Friendly Icebreakers. And that's actually part of my new visual facilitation business called Bright Pilots. And Bright Pilots is all about essentially growing the facilitation skills in anyone and everyone. Because let's face it, we all hire smart people where we work, and we all work with smart people. And Matt, you're pretty smart yourself, and I'm sure you work with smart people. And oftentimes I find there's so many people who are trying to solve problems that have already been solved. And that's where facilitators and coaches can really help, just to help people connect the dots, help people have a better conversation. Facilitators are great at doing that. And that's what Bright Pilots is all about. Myself and a network of facilitators I work with, we help people have better conversations. We help them frame problems better, solve problems better, come up with better solutions. And because we are all online at the moment and we're all turning into zombies, I thought to myself, wow, what can we do to make all of these online meetings less sucky? And I thought, well, that's what icebreakers and energizers and all that are great for. So that's why I wrote 50 remote-friendly icebreakers. And so you can find that at brightpilots.com/icebreakers. Is that okay? Can I say that?
Please.
Brilliant. brightpilots.com/icebreakers. And it's a companion website as well as an ebook. And I think at the moment there's about 70 icebreakers on there and growing, but the ebook has 50. And there's all sorts of great games and quick conversation starters in there. And I guarantee you that there are no cheesy ones. I don't like the cheesy ones. No one likes the cheesy ones. I didn't put those in there.
I'm more than happy for you to plug that, because I did buy a copy and I've had a look, and it's an amazing resource. I take my hat off, and every single icebreaker on the list is beautifully hand illustrated. They look incredible. You've done a fantastic job. So congratulations on launching that.
Oh, magic. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Ben, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a whole lot of fun. Thanks, man.
Awesome. That's it for this episode of the Sketchcast. Be sure to subscribe so you can be updated when the next episode goes live. We have some amazing guests lined up for you, so I'm super excited about what's in store. Until next time, stay sketchy. Say something? Hey!
And we'll never know why. We'll never know why. It's just a mystery.
Sometimes Zoom sees a new change to the system and goes, oh, would you like this to be your microphone? I'll make it your speaker as well.
Yeah, here's a half-eaten cheese sandwich. Use this. You're like, no.
Pretend that we haven't even had a conversation.
Hi, Matt. Yeah, okay.
We don't need to stick on the script if we find a little a little worm that we want to follow down a burrow. I'm missing my metaphor.
Yes, let's follow that worm.
Blah, 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 blah. Let me try that exit again, and we'll use the magic of editing to...